Well, having been in technology for a long time, what's interesting about fiber is that it's finally bridging the dream and the reality of technology. You know, I mean, I started off in web technologies in 1990, so I'm an old school guy. But you know, the things that we conceptualized when the internet first came to life and when the web first went online, at the time they were only dreams because of bandwidth. You know, I remember when we went from a 14.4 modem to a 56 modem, and I remember talking to a friend of mine saying one day we'll get to magazine style speeds online, and they were scoffing at me and saying that's not possible, it'll never move any faster than it moves. You know, when you look at something like 100 times faster than what's currently considered to be a pretty fast speed, 100 times faster than a cable modem, I think what's interesting about fiber is its ability to change the culture of information, because information then becomes instantly accessible in a way that's never been before. What that means for education is that education, and I've actually spent a lot of my time in private training. I was a public educator. I've educated at the elementary level, high school level, private university, and public university as well. The last decade I've spent on corporate training. And the discussion we're having today is the same discussion that corporate training had 10 years ago, and that was, how do we change the instructor-led one-to-one time ratio to a one-to-many time ratio, where we can store information, we can distribute information, we can change education. And I think there really is, as one of my peers in the group today said, there really is an education revolution that's forming right now, and it's a necessity. It's a necessity because we've gotten to the point where distance is no longer a hurdle. Information should be universally accessible. Bigger band that's free or cheap is accessible by schools now, so that means eliminating some of the costs on public facilities. So there's a lot of things from an education standpoint that we can take advantage of that fiber is going to give us a huge advantage over, especially for Kansas City as a starting point. You know, we as a technologist, I can tell you how excited I am, but for me to translate that excitement into a tangible real-world benefit for a recipient of fiber is a completely different equation. I mean, for most people, the general public can have that same attitude of what I have is enough. I don't need more than what I already have. So I think there's an education about the business benefits, which I think will be pretty easy to sell. I think there's an opportunity to educate about residential benefits, which will be, again, fairly easy to sell. When it comes into things that are community-based projects, I think that there's a need for creating community education, meaning that we as technologists, as resource providers, as educators, as community advocates, we need to be leading the forefront of the discussion and educating people on what this means, how this will change the dialogue of the conversation.
You've seen a lot of interesting ideas today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think we've got, being a big fan of ideation myself, I think that today's a great example of, if we all took the time and the energy to sit down and talk to each other, there's really not a problem we couldn't solve, and solve fairly quickly. And I think that happens best, and most interesting enough, I think that happens best among strangers. I think when you put peers in a room, peers have a tendency to peacock a little bit, but with strangers, we're all open to new ideas and new influences and new energy. So I think it's been a great session so far. Other than the folks in the room, not an idea yet. There hasn't been that one big idea. I think, because our focus is K through 12, our focus is education, and K through 12 is, all the business community knows that K through 12 is not impossible, but it's hard to monetize education in a private business sense, unless we privatize all education. So what we're really looking at is more from an altruistic standpoint. What can we do to provide back into that marketplace, information, ideas, energy to help, help the adoption of the technology. However, I think that the core idea that we're walking away from is that, that we've taken away so far from the morning, is that the community needs to communicate with each other. They're separate entities in the community that are not communicating, and I think that's really the big idea so far, is communication.